A670. So here is going to be today's lesson for social studies. Today's lesson is going to be on slavery auctions. And here's today's learning target. I can read slave narratives and view primary source images to understand the impact of slavery. So in case you missed the previous lesson, uh, the previous lesson was about the growth of slavery and how slave populations increased from 1800 to 1860 in the United States, and how it was deeply rooted in the South and expanded west. Today, we're going to take a more in depth, close look at how slavery impacted slaves. So, here's some background information about slave auctions. So, auctions were advertised in newspapers and on posters all throughout the original 13 colonies and later the United States. So before 1807, which is the year that Congress banned the legal importation of slaves from Africa, advertisements included information about the name and location of the arriving ship. Many advertisements included specific information about the gender, age, prices, and even skills of the individuals for sale. So, in other words, remember that slaves were property and they could be used for buying and for selling, right? And all that information, such as the gender, age, and prices and skills of them, they were advertised on those posters. And I'm going to show you some examples of what those posters look like. So here are some advertisements. So it would say great sale of slaves, right? It would advertise a whole bunch of slaves. It would tell you their age, their strengths and skills. For example, aged from 20 to 26, strong, able-bodied. And here they have the price: $3, one wench, $1, $17, right? It tells you a little bit about those slaves. Um, Here, it says to be sold on Thursday, the third day of August, right? And here it's telling you that it's a cargo and they're transporting um, 94 of those slaves. All right, 39 men, 15 boys, 34 women, 16 girls just arrived in the Brigantine Dembia. Um, so this arrived in the Brigantine Dembia, Francis Bear, after from Sierra Leone. So this was clearly before 1807, right? Which is the year when the importation of slaves from Africa was banned, because here they were brought from Africa. All right. So you get the idea of what these advertisements were about. All right. So let's continue. So slaves were washed, shaved, and had their skin oiled to make them appear healthy in order to increase their sale price. After 1807, the domestic slave trade within the United States, it flourished rapidly, specifically in the Deep South and new Western territories where large plantations developed. So, in other words, the domestic slave trade within the country, it grew very fast, right? Especially in the Deep South and some of those Western territories that we viewed in the previous lesson. So slaves were continuing to be bought and sell after 1807, even after that law was passed. So many slaves were sent to these areas to work on cotton and sugar plantations. Between 1790 and 1860, 835,000 slaves were moved from Maryland, Virginia, and the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, to the Deep South. By the 1830s, slavery was primarily located in the South, where African Americans were enslaved on small farms, large plantations, inside homes, out on the fields, and in cities. It's estimated that 75% of Southern whites did not own slaves. And of those who did, 88% owned 20 or fewer slaves. While the majority of poor white farmers in the South did not own slaves, they aspired, or they really wanted, to become wealthy and powerful someday, and therefore they supported the institution of slavery, and which in turn supported the South's entire economy. So those poor white farmers in the South, they wanted to own slaves, right? So once again, we went over these advertisements, and here's gonna be a video of slavery auction in action, what it actually looks like, right? I don't know if you've ever seen an auction or been to an auction, but basically, you have things for sale, and whoever offers the highest price ends up buying whatever it is for sale. All right, I'm sure you've heard it before. Going once, going twice, and if nobody else offers a higher price, that person ends up buying it. So that's what was happening with slaves. So in your own time, you're gonna watch that video, and your homework assignment is gonna be based on this video. And it's really gonna give you an idea of what slavery auction was about. So here is an excerpt of a slave narrative. All right. Now, your classwork and your exit ticket question, just your classwork question is gonna be based on this excerpt. So it's going to ask us what scene is depicted or shown here. What does the excerpt reveal about those being sold and those buying? All right. So in other words, what is shown here? What is this painting a picture of? What is being talked about here? All right. So we're going to read it, and we're going to try to answer this question. I will attempt to give you as accurate an account of the language and ceremony of a slave auction as I possibly can. Boy, pull off your shirt, roll up your pants, for we want to see if you have been whipped. If they discover any scars, they will not buy. The auctioneer, seeing this, cries, $300, gentlemen, $300. Shall I sell him for $300? So remember what we said before about the slaves being cleaned up, oiled up, and if they don't have those scars and they can sell at a higher price. That's what's going on here. The auctioneer wants to see if he's not scarred up or not. If he is scarred up or not. Shall I sell him for $300? I have just been informed by his master that he is an honest boy and belongs to the same church that he does. This turns the tide frequently, and the bids go up fast. So people are offering even more money after they hear this information. Once he tells them that he's an honest boy and he belongs to the same church as his master, people want to offer even more for him. And he is knocked off for a good sum, meaning he is sold for a high price. After the men and women are sold, the children are put on the stand. I was the first put up. So now we can see that this is spoken from the point of view of a child, right? On my appearance, several voices cried. I again burst into tears and wept so that I have no distinct recollection of his answer. I was at length knocked down to a man whose name was Denton, a slave trader, then purchasing slaves for the southern market. His first name I have forgotten. So this boy who was speaking ended up being sold to a slave trader, right, who was purchasing slaves for the southern market, right, and he didn't remember his first name. So this boy is giving you a first-hand account of what it's like at a slave auction. All right. So think of some of the important details that are being talked about here. The auctioneer giving a price, right? The auctioneer rolling up his shirt to show the crowd that he's not scarred up from being whipped, right? And it's important to note that they don't want to have any scars or people will not buy, right? And we also want to note that the auctioneer wants the slaves to sound like good people. So he says he's an honest boy and belongs to the same church that he does. Because when people who bought slaves, they wanted to make sure that the person they were buying is someone they could trust, an honest person, and that will do the work, all right? And you can see that these people are just being sold like property, right? They're clearly not being treated like human beings. So that should help you answer this classwork question. What scene is being shown or depicted here? And what does the excerpt reveal about those being sold and those buying? All right, what were people looking for when they were buying slaves? Right? And what does this show about the people who bought slaves? Now, let's look at uh, this advertisement over here. And the exit ticket question, let me write that out. Exit ticket is going to ask you, what does this advertisement reveal about slavery? And I want you to write what are some of your thoughts and reactions to this advertisement. So, this advertisement reveals a lot of things, as we went over before, right? It tells us the prices, it tells us the ages of the slaves that they were looking for, right? It tells us some of the skills that they had, so you can clearly see that they were looking for skilled people, strong people, right? This person wanted someone who cooked, right? This is written kind of small, so I'm going to read it to you. There will be offered for sale at public auction at the slave market, Cheapside, Lexington, all the slaves of John Carter, Esquire of Lewis County, on account of his removal to Indiana, a free state. The slaves listed below were all raised on the Carter plantation at Quicks Run, Lewis County, Kentucky. So once again, we can see that this is in the South, right? So what does this reveal about slavery, right? What does this show about the slaves who were being auctioned? And I want you to write what some of your thoughts and reactions are, all right? So that's everything for the classwork and the exit ticket. And once again, I'm going to post this on the lesson, and your homework assignment is going to be based on this video, which is this video right here. You're going to click on it. It's going to take you to YouTube. It's the slave auctions. All right. And be sure to just read through the whole directions for this lesson. Make sure you don't miss anything. All right. All the directions are here as well. And that is everything you need to know.